Hi everyone, I'm Damien from Team Micro and welcome to Growth Hacking 101, the podcast for permanent makeup artists and SMP artists who want to get the best out of their business. Today, I want to cover a thorny topic and one that I know many of you have fairly strong feelings about, and I feel that it's good that we air this out and really kind of talk about this. I want to talk about conferences and I want to talk about awards, industry awards. Now, conferences are an amazing opportunity for people who share a common interest to come together and really benefit from that experience. And they can benefit from it in many, many different ways. So one of those ways is education. So most conferences will have an element of education. So there could be live demonstrations, there could be talks, and that enables you to really kind of get information from some of the world leaders in the field who you might not otherwise meet or might not have access to from a training point of view. So it's a really nice opportunity to learn something new. The second thing that conferences do is they provide inspiration. When you're surrounded by like-minded people, many of whom are doing really well in their businesses, it gives you so many ideas. And a real common theme from our conferences is that people come away inspired and motivated and fired up and ready to go back to their own businesses and hit the ground running. And I don't think we can underestimate the importance of that. The third benefit that people get from conferences is the camaraderie, it's the relationships, it's the networking, it's the friendship groups. I remember when we first ran Meeting of Minds back in 2017, there were friendships formed at that time. They weren't friendships at the time. They were merely just people meeting for the first time. But many of those relationships have blossomed into real friendships. Now, that's important because, business is tough. Any business is tough. Permanent makeup and SMP is particularly tough because we're dealing with people's emotions day in, day out. And having that support network around you is really, really important. But there's also a practical use as well for these relationships, which is the sharing of ideas. If you're wanting to grow your business or go in a certain direction, or if you're having a particular challenge, to have a group of people around you who are able to provide their own experience and, people who have no vested interest whatsoever, but are just purely wanting to help because they are, for whatever reason, they just want to be there to support you. And for you to reciprocate that same is a really valuable part of being in business. And it's also part of growing up and maturing as an industry. So there are so many benefits for going to these conferences. Awards are a different animal. People love awards for different reasons. It's an opportunity to recognize and reward not only the best talent, but also innovation and improvement. So at our awards, we always have categories for rising stars. And the reason for those awards is that somebody shouldn't have to work for 10 years in an industry in order to have their talents recognized. These particular award categories are aimed at newer artists who have gone from 0 to 100 really, really quickly and are showing real talent. So that's the positives around conferences and awards and all the reasons why you should go to them. And aside from anything else, it's a whole lot of fun. About 2/3 of the people that come to Meeting of Minds fly in from overseas. So for the artists who attend, it's a vacation, they come along, they have a few drinks, they have a really good time, they get a chance to explore, make new friends, meet people. It's just a whole lot of fun. And that in itself is a good enough reason. However, the conferencing and awards industry is not without its flaws. And that absolutely applies to permanent makeup and SMP. The reality is that not all conferences are created equal. Not all award ceremonies are created equal. Now, I'm not saying for 1 second that Meeting of Minds and Team Micro Awards and Team Micro Live, the awards we have are without their flaws. We're always trying to do better. Of course we are. And there are some fantastic conferences out there, some really, really good conferences that, frankly, as a conference organizer myself, I look at their events and I just think, wow, we would love to do that one day. So this is not by any means a pitch for our own conferences. But you do have to be aware that there are some real problems out there. For example, one of the things that I know really gets under people's skin is the fact that a lot of the time, speakers at conferences are actually paying to speak. Now, if you consider the implications of that, The only reason that they would pay to speak would be if they had a product or service to sell, which is usually either a physical product or a program. There's nothing wrong with that in very strict moderation, but when most of the speakers at an event are paying to speak, then you have to question the value from your point of view as an attendee going to an event to listen to a series of effectively sales pitches. I personally think that conferences should lead with value first, and I think the idea of charging speakers to appear on stage is just wrong. That's my opinion. Some may disagree. I don't think it's good for the speaker. I think it's demeaning. I think it attracts not the wrong kind of speakers, but the wrong kind of motivations. I don't think it's good from an attendee's point of view either. And often attendees will pay to come to these events and they won't know that that's what they're walking into. Another issue with conferences that we find, certainly in the SMP world, but it happens a lot in the permanent makeup world as well, is that every event you go to, it's the same usual suspect list of speakers. And if you're somebody who attends a lot of events, that can get a little monotonous over time, but also, and I feel this is really the key issue here, is that it's not providing opportunities for new artists or for those artists who are up and coming to really have their moment, to have their time on stage and to show the world what they've got. It's robbing them of the opportunity to do that, which I really don't think is good for our industry or good for those artists. And finally, conferences that are kind of over-sponsored can be a little bit kind of, I don't know, just not very nice, like everything has somebody's brand logo on it. It's not necessarily, of course, sponsorship has a place, but there is some of these events go way, way, way too far. As far as awards are concerned, awards are a really great thing. The issue is that they are, and I'm going to put my neck on the line here and say that at least 50% of the time, these awards are not as unbiased as they purport to be. So many influences get in the way of some of these awards. One of those influences is sponsorship. So if there is a company that's spending a lot of money sponsoring an event, often they will expect for their artists, their representatives, or their products to win awards at these events. I've seen it multiple times at some of the world's biggest conferences, and it's just wrong. It's unethical. Now, we will never ever succumb to that. And I want to point out that I say 50%, there are a lot of events out there, a lot of conferences that, like us, will never compromise their integrity by effectively selling or making their awards for sale. Another issue is friendship groups, which, as we've already covered, can be a really good thing. The downside is when those friendship groups compromise the impartiality of either who gets to speak at the conferences or who wins the awards. And I've seen conferences before where you'll have a close network of people who are really, really good friends, or they work together or have some kind of business association with each other. And lo and behold, what tends to happen is those people win all the awards. And the thing is, it's so obvious, it's so transparent from the outside looking in. And that must be really demotivating for artists who feel that they don't get a look in because they're not in the right friendship group or the right clique. For me, that's wrong. To summarize, conferences and awards are a really, really good thing. They bring big value to our industry. And it's one of those things that, as part of an industry growing up and maturing, we have to have these. And the permanent makeup industry that is quite a few years ahead of the scalp micropigmentation industry, you'll see awards in virtually every country around the world. And some of these conferences are huge. And that's the sign of a thriving, healthy industry. The SMP world, the first ever conference in the SMP world was run by Scalp Aesthetics back in 2016 in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it's not really recognized as a conference as such because it was just Scalp Aesthetics' own people, but it was nonetheless the first event. The second event was ours. It was Meeting of Minds. We ran it in 2017. It was the first independent event in the world. But since then, a range of other events have come forward. There's the World Training Group Scalp Micropigmentation event that took place in Orlando. That was 2018, I believe, 2019. Then Jeff Picasso has his SMP Expo. Matt Ayulo has got the Scalp Show. And there's a new SMP event taking place out in Bangkok. I think it's in June, being headed by Miguel and Sassy Silva. So the fact that these events are starting to expand out is a really, really good thing because it's good for our industry. It helps our industry grow. The other thing that's happening a lot that I see is that the permanent makeup conferences and some of the hair transplant summits are starting to incorporate SMP and bring in SMP-based speakers. I've also been invited to China at the end of the year to speak at a big permanent makeup conference to represent SMP. So these things are happening a lot. And this is a really, really good thing. All I'm saying is that as an industry, if we're going to run these events, we have a responsibility to make sure that we do so using strong moral conduct. And especially with awards, we need to make sure that those awards remain impartial. I see in the groups, the Facebook groups, all the time, people call us up and they feel disheartened by awards because they can see right through what's happening at some of these events, and it's really not a good thing, because we don't want artists to not want to be involved in these award ceremonies, because they can add real value. If you're up for an award, even if you don't win, even if you're nominated, that's a really good tool. It's a good tool for your business. It shows your customers that you are of a certain caliber. And I really don't want artists to miss out on what is a wonderful opportunity. But we have a responsibility to do this the right way. This year at Meeting of Minds, our award ceremony, we have a new judging system, which is absolutely impossible for us to manipulate, even if we wanted to, which is a really fantastic thing. And we're quite happy to share that voting system with any other conference organizer. Not that these other conference organizers are necessarily doing anything wrong, but it's difficult to know sometimes how to run awards in a way that is transparent, in a way that's going to keep as many people happy as possible. So we're quite happy to be open about that and share that. You're also going to see a whole bunch of speakers at Meeting of Minds this year that you've never seen on stage at any event, which is part of our commitment to giving artists who have not necessarily had that stage time the opportunity to shine. That's all for me. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me, feel free to comment below. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the bell icon so you get all our notifications. If you're listening to this as a podcast, then subscribe using whichever channel you're using, or find us on Facebook in the Facebook groups that we run. But thank you very much for listening. Be really interested to hear your thoughts. That's all from me. Over and out.